On a warm spring morning in 1924, passengers boarded the Sunshine Express, a train meant to carry them safely from Toowoomba to Brisbane. Families, workers, students, all settled into their seats, unaware that their journey would soon become one of Australia's greatest unsolved mysteries. Because by the time the locomotive pulled into the next station, two of its rear carriages had completely vanished. The passengers, the seats they occupied, even the luggage stored inside, gone without a trace. What followed was a month-long search that raised more questions than answers, and a mystery that still haunts Queensland's railway history to this very day. Australia in the 1920s was a nation still finding its identity. World War I had ended only a few years earlier, and the country was rebuilding, balancing hope for the future with the scars of the past. Rail travel was central to Australian life. The Sunshine Express was one of the Queensland Railway's pride routes, a daily passenger service connecting Toowoomba with Brisbane, winding through rolling hills, small rural stations, and the dense bushland that defined the Darling Downs region. On November 22, 1924, the train left Toowoomba shortly after dawn. It was a warm morning, the kind of day where sunlight shimmered across the gum trees and the air smelled faintly of eucalyptus. The express carried its usual mix of passengers: farm workers, businessmen, women traveling to Brisbane for shopping, a few children heading to visit relatives, and several soldiers returning home from regional duties. The train was not overcrowded, but steady. Railway records suggest around 120 passengers were on board. It was an ordinary trip, at least at first. The Sunshine Express rolled eastward, its locomotive puffing white plumes into the clear morning sky. Passengers in the forward cars chatted quietly, while those in the rear settled into books, newspapers, or small conversations. The train's configuration that day consisted of a steam locomotive, followed by a tender, 3 passenger coaches, a dining car, and then 2 rear passenger carriages, the last of which was a slightly older model, wooden in frame, but still in use. The journey was smooth as the express passed small waypoints, Hutton, Granville, and other familiar stops. At each station, a handful of passengers disembarked while others climbed aboard. Everything seemed normal. But as the train moved between Hutton and Granville, something inexplicable happened. When the Sunshine Express pulled into Granville Station, railway staff immediately noticed something was wrong. The conductor stepped down, pale and shaken. He quickly approached the station master, whispering urgently. The train that arrived was shorter. The last 2 carriages were missing. At first, staff thought it was some kind of mechanical mishap. Perhaps a coupling had failed and the rear cars had separated. But such an event would have caused an immediate emergency. Passengers would have panicked, brakes would have engaged, and the missing carriages should have been found within a few hundred yards of the tracks. Instead, nothing was there. Rail workers backtracked along the line. There was no derailment, no broken couplings, no signs of wreckage or smoke. The rear 2 carriages, with dozens of passengers, had simply vanished. News spread quickly. Within hours, search parties were organized. Railway inspectors, police officers, and even local farmers scoured the countryside. The tracks were checked inch by inch. Bushland was combed, but there was no sign of the missing carriages.
For days, the region buzzed with theories. Some believed the carriages had been mistakenly diverted onto a sidetrack, though no such junction existed along the section in question. Others whispered about sabotage, suggesting someone had deliberately removed the cars. Newspapers picked up the story, sensationalizing it as the vanishing carriages of Queensland. Locals flocked to the area hoping to catch a glimpse of the ghost train. The search widened. Rivers and creeks near the line were dragged in case the carriages had somehow rolled off into the water. Patrols extended into the bush. Even Aboriginal trackers were called in to help. But there were no footprints, no broken vegetation, no wheel marks leading away from the tracks. The carriages and the people inside were simply gone.
Weeks turned into a month. Pressure mounted on Queensland railways, and rumors spread like wildfire. Then, in late December 1924, a shocking discovery was made. Far from the main line, down an old unused siding deep in the bush, the two missing carriages were found. They were perfectly intact, standing silent in the heat of the Australian summer. But they were empty. Inside, luggage sat untouched. Hats hung neatly on racks. Newspapers lay folded on tables, as if passengers had simply stood up and walked away. There were no bodies, no signs of struggle, no broken windows. Every wallet, every handbag, every personal belonging was still there. It was as though an entire group of people had simply evaporated. The discovery only deepened the mystery. How had the carriages reached that siding? The junction to access it had long been decommissioned, its levers rusted and locked. Railway engineers swore it was impossible for the carriages to roll there without deliberate intervention. Several theories emerged. Mechanical separation. Some argued the couplings failed and the carriages somehow rolled onto the siding. But physics didn't support this. The grade of the land was wrong, and there was no evidence of fresh wheel marks leading in. Sabotage. Others suggested someone tampered with the junction and diverted the carriages. But why? And where had the passengers gone? Mass abduction. The strangest theory, whispered late at night, was that something otherworldly had taken place. Witnesses reported hearing strange humming sounds near the line days before the incident, and some even claimed to see lights in the sky. Cover-up. Conspiracy theorists believed the government knew more than it admitted, pointing to the unusually fast closure of the official investigation. The Sunshine Express continued to run, but its reputation was scarred. Passengers began referring to the missing carriages as the ghost cars. For years afterwards, travelers swore they could feel a chill when passing the section between Hutton and Granville. Queensland Railways quietly dismantled the siding where the carriages were found, erasing its physical trace from the network. The carriages themselves were scrapped within a decade. As for the missing passengers, they were officially declared deceased in the 1930s, though no remains were ever found. Families mourned, but true closure never truly came. The Sunshine Express disappearance has never been explained. Historians continued to puzzle over it, while paranormal enthusiasts call it Australia's greatest railway mystery. Was it human error? Was it foul play? Or was it something beyond our understanding? Almost a century later, the story still circulates in Australian folklore. Some claim to see ghostly figures along the tracks at night. Others hear the echo of a train whistle where no train runs. And each time the Sunshine Express is mentioned, the same question lingers. How can two train carriages full of people vanish into thin air and return completely empty?